Hello, Patrick. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm good, Bala. Thank you very much for inviting me onto your great show.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for making the time with the time difference and everything. Me coming
Yes,
to you in London, so it's extra appreciated because you already have the weekend starting where you are. So,
yes. If not for the podcast, I'll be having my glass of scotch at the moment. Now, before we get into the podcast, would you mind telling our listeners about yourself and the work you do?
sure. Happy to. My name is Patrick, and I'm currently the digital marketing and communication director for a company called CinemaNext. You wouldn't have heard of CinemaNext, but it is the world's biggest builder and installer of cinemas. So it's active across UK, Europe, North America. We're not in Asia yet. Maybe we could be one day.
Mm.
And effectively, we provide the projectors, seats, the installation, anything for cinemas. In my spare time, I run a streaming website for classic cult and genre film called Cult Picks. So that's my hobby. So films really are my life, whether building cinemas or being involved in streaming and film collection. But I've worked in film and cinema in different roles for many, many years and in many, many countries. So I've been both an analyst for publications such as Screen Digest or Celluloid Junkie, but I've also been involved in business development and operating of cinemas and cinema related businesses, such as companies like Deluxe. In India, I worked for a company called AdLabs, later Reliance MediaWorks. And I've also worked in Singapore. So I've had a great front row seats to all the amazing changes in the cinema market in Asia, in countries like China, Korea, Australia, you name it. It's been a great ride, and it's a great privilege to get to work with the thing that I love, which is films and cinema.
It's incredible, Patrick. I mean, not many would get that privilege to follow their passion. At the same time, you get paid for following your passion. That's wonderful. You have worked with companies globally, and you just mentioned you worked in India as well. I wanted to start with a question. You have worked in Indian movie industry. What can Western media or Hollywood can learn from Indian film industry?
There's a lot that Western cinema and Hollywood could learn from India. And I thought this even when I worked there, which is now a while ago. I was in Mumbai roughly between 2010 and 2008 and 2011. And then I
Mm,
kept working for the same company, but in London. And I was just full of admiration for the cinema industry. Frustrated sometimes working on the inside, but full of admiration because, they just make it work whatever it takes. And let's take a concrete example. The whole
mm,
discussion about the windows between a film releasing in cinema and then going on streaming platforms or satellite television channels. Indian film producers did not have a ideology. If a film didn't work in the cinema, it would be out on satellite and pay-per-view platforms possibly the next weekend or very much sooner.
mm.
If a film did really well and it stayed in cinemas, they would keep it that way. They would not release it on DVD at the time or put it on streaming for over a year sometimes. So if there was a really good Amir Khan or Shah Rukh Khan film, then you'd have to go and see it in a cinema.
Mm.
And this kind of flexibility on windows, I think, could definitely benefit Hollywood. So certain films could maybe just have a limited release in cinemas, especially something like smaller film documentaries, and
Mm.
then while they still have publicity, while they have attention, they could go out on other platforms. But a really big film that's doing really well in cinema should stay in the cinema, and people should have the opportunity to see it there. And I'm sure we'll get into that later, but that's just one example. The other thing is India was way ahead of Hollywood in terms of global day and date. That means a film going out across the world on the same date. So it's playing in
Oh.
Mumbai, the same day it's playing in Manchester or Montreal or Melbourne, you name it. And there was a very good reason for that because pirates were very good film distributors. So if you did not have your film in the cinema on the same opening weekend, they would be have it, in the illegal shops on discs the very next morning, probably. So we had to pioneer the distribution of the latest, Salman Khan film or whatever it was we were working on to all around the world. We were the first in the world, ahead of Hollywood, to make
Mm.
distribution of big digital cinema copies over fiber optic networks around the world a reality, and Hollywood belatedly cover up. So there's technological advantage, there's flexibility on business terms, and also just on being able to deliver the biggest bang for the bucks. Nobody puts the money on the screen like Indian film producers. They make, a $10 million film look like $50 million. And there's something to be said for that.
Right. Uh, that's interesting perspective, Patrick. Now I wanted to. You just mentioned about piracy. You said
Mm.
Indian movies they get released on the same day worldwide. Uh, but if Hollywood does, I think Hollywood has a bit of um, a gap in terms of releasing worldwide. They have their own timelines, but
Mm.
piracy still plays the same role in the Hollywood movies as well. How is it going to be different?
Piracy definitely still plays a big role, especially for Hollywood films, and they have gotten better at shrinking the international release window. So, for example, in Europe, in many countries like Italy, they wouldn't release films in the summer because they thought, nah, Italians, they want to be on the beach. They don't want to sit in the cinema. But that's all changing now. Now we're seeing more global day and date releases. Now, that doesn't make sense for every film. Sometimes you want to hold back, build up a little bit of publicity, especially for maybe smaller films. But if it's a Marvel film or if it's a Batman release, then yes, if you don't put it out pretty soon globally, then
Mm,
pirates will compete with that. Now, what they can do apart from pushing out the films day and date, and this is for the cinemas, is just to make it a better experience. Going to the cinema shouldn't involve, uncomfortable seats or sticky floors or dirty toilets. It should be something they say, yes, I might be able to watch it at home on the laptop, on a pirate site, although God
mm,
knows what viruses you'll catch from that. But if I go to the cinema, I'm going to have a really great experience. I'm
mm.
going to be just
Yep,
more comfortable in my seat than anything at home. The sound is going to be more immersive. The screen is going to be bright and beautiful. I'm just going to have a really, really good time out.
agree. I second that. Did you get any opportunity when you were in India to visit a shooting spot or shooting set to see how the
Oh, I
movies are
lived
made?
in it. I worked in it because I was very lucky. The company I worked for, AdLabs, which became Reliance MediaWorks, was located right in the heart of Bollywood or Hindi filmmaking.
Right. Yeah.
So Film City is in the northeast corner of the sort of suburbs of Mumbai, and that's where shooting was going on all the time. So as I was driving to work, there would be My Name is Khan would be shooting, and they'd built a church, a sort of a southern a South U.S. church, as Eugene, Georgia, to shoot there, and there would be film stages and there would be film shoots, and occasionally my road would be blocked because there was a big scene
Okay.
going on, but there was always something happening. So yes, I was very, very lucky in terms of being just in the heart of it. And not to gossip too much, but AdLabs was where back then they were still shooting on film. All the film prints came for processing to us. So when it came
Okay.
time for the screenings, then, Aishwarya Rai and Abhishek would be there, watching it. And so we would get all of the glitterati of Bollywood, coming to our place because we had the screening room where they could watch the advanced previews and rushes of the films. So very, very fortunate feeling to be able to be at the beating heart of filmmaking like that.
So tell me about this. This is what I wanted to pick your brain. Um, what can Hollywood learn from Indian movie industry from a logistic perspective in terms
Mm.
of making movies, actual making movies on the set?
Well, it's all changing now, and it's changing as much in India as it is changing in Hollywood. So you've got the arrival of artificial intelligence, and
Mm,
that's going to have to be incorporated. And we have to figure out how we can benefit the creative arts, and not just make things cheaper or be an excuse for not having craftsmanship, whether you make a costume or build a set or helping an actor improve his or her lines. So it is similar things, but what Hollywood really needs to do is it needs to get people enthused about the going to the film and seeing a film on the big screen. And at the moment, we're seeing that in India, although of course Bollywood, frankly, has been going through a little bit of a tough spot recently. It just hasn't connected with audiences, not the
Mm,
way that
mm.
South Indian filmmakers. I don't
Yeah,
know what your
exactly.
feeling is about this, but we're
Now,
seeing so much creativity coming out of the South, and the hits are there. But Bollywood is just trying to get
I'm
back to
not.
its glory days.
Now, given that we have OTT, we have streaming platforms, we have a lot of options for audience to watch a movie. What's keeping cinema alive in a world ruled by streaming, TikTok, and AI? What do you think?
That is an excellent question. And that is a question that we in the media industry should be asking ourselves every day. What makes cinema relevant? Why is it still around after 130 years? And I would say there's three reasons for that. And the first of which is that you have to look at cinema as not a film consumption platform primarily, but as a social experience.
Mm,
It's a reason to leave the house because we can access any film on, this device here at any time, but it's not the same experience. It's not the same as, sitting amongst a group of people enjoying it on, the biggest screen with the best sound, if it's a good cinema, that is. So same as we have restaurants, even though we've got microwaves and we've got takeaway and delivery of
yep.
food, people want to go out and enjoy themselves. So it's not so much that cinema is competing with streaming platforms or TikTok or YouTube, but rather it's competing with restaurants, with concerts, with stand-up clubs, with other reasons for leaving the home and meeting friends and going out and enjoying yourself, having a good night out simply.
Mm,
The second reason I would say is that the biggest talent still wants to work for telling stories on the biggest screen. So when you have film directors like Christopher Nolan or Greta Gerwig, they still want to make
mm,
stories that are enjoyed in cinemas. So, yes, actors might go and be tempted by the money or the creative freedom that the streamers give them, but they're not creating the kind of memorable cultural experiences that are happening in cinema. So, not just that the fact that Tom Cruise Mission Impossible or the Bond films will only go to cinema before they go to a streaming platform, but it's also that it creates cultural phenomenon which are just lacking on streaming for films. I'll qualify that in a second. We haven't had a Barbenheimer moment for
yep.
streaming simply. We only got that because Oppenheimer and Barbie came out at the same time, and it became a fun thing to do. You would dress up
Mm,
as Barbie or Oppenheimer and make silly videos for Instagram. And that hasn't been replicated by streamers for films. Now, for TV series, it could be different. We had some great, TV shows come
mm,
out, especially recently, like Severance, like White Lotus. Uh, and that's all very good because TV has always been good at doing TV. But look at Netflix's most recent big tentpole title, The Electric State.
yeah,
Have you
yep.
watched it?
Not it. It's who's the guy? Chris Pratt.
Yeah, Chris
Chris is
Pratt from
yep.
Jurassic World and
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Guardians of the
Guardian of
Galaxy.
Galaxy. Yes, yes.
And Millie Bobby
I've
Brown from Stranger Things. Now,
yes.
Netflix allegedly spent $320 million on that. Over $300 million. It's got a Rotten Tomato score of 15, 1 5. It is just, and
Uh,
it's got a little bit better audience score. I think it's up to 65, so it's not a complete turkey, but it's dropped out of it's no longer the number one film on Netflix charts. It's if it wasn't a cinema, we could say, well, it only took 20 million or whatever it is that considered a flop. But the fact that it's dropping away from the number one spot, and this is the Russo brothers who directed it, the people who, or the brothers who made the, Avengers
Avengers.
Endgame
Yep.
films, some of the biggest films of all time. And they're just, I mean, their previous film, Grey Man,
Gray Man. Yep.
okay, yeah, it
It's
was
all right.
okay. But are we talking about it still today? Nah, it's still there. Whereas we're still talking about Avengers and when the
Mm,
next Marvel film is going to come out. So second reason is that, the big talent goes for the big screen. And the third one, which I want to touch upon, is the fact that apart from being a cultural phenomenon and being something that gets us out of the house, it's also something that's good for us mentally. It's been shown
mm-hmm.
that people feel better psychologically going to the cinema, even on their own, but sitting in
Yep.
a group with a room full of strangers, switching off their phone, getting immersed in the cinema. It's just a better experience, mentally and psychologically. And in an age when we're all isolating more and more, eating alone, spending time on our smartphones alone, going out amongst people, even if we're on our own, is a good
Yep.
thing for us mentally.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with you because the recent one, I took my son, a 7-year-old, to Mufasa, watching the
Oh, yes.
cinemas, and yeah, he loved it. And he
Uh-huh.
had a lot of questions after that. That's different
Right?
because it he I think when he watched Lion King, he understood Lion King, but it was quite
Yes.
hard for him to relate because the movie was going out of
Ah,
back and forth
yeah,
in
yeah.
Mufasa, so it was hard for him to relate. Okay, Simba,
Mm,
and why is he called Uncle Scar? Why not Timon? All
true.
this. Yeah, it was. Then the movie came back and it was released on Disney Plus, and he watched it
Right.
with us at home, and then we were able to explain to him
Yeah,
what was happening.
it made sense.
It made sense to him. It was able, where I can't do that in the cinemas because I was enjoying the movie
Mm,
in the cinemas. Now
yes.
we just mentioned about AI,
Mm,
that it is playing a critical role in movie from a piracy standpoint, from a production
yes.
standpoint. I've also read an article in Hollywood, I believe, that
Mm,
producers and the management are thinking about deploying using AI to create stories, to cut
yes.
cost, to cut cost in production,
Mm.
pre-planning, stuff like that. How do you see that?
When it comes to AI, there is a lot of fear in Hollywood, and not just in
Mm,
Hollywood, but primarily there. And if you think back just a year ago when we had the Hollywood strikes, so
mm,
we had two guilds that went on strike at the same time for a number of reasons. So it was the Actors Guild, and then it was the Writers Guild at the same time. And they were both worried about AI. They were, negotiating a lot of things about, residual payments for streaming and so on. But AI was what really put the fear into them that a studio executive would, scan an actor's face and voice, and then they wouldn't need them because they can get AI to fill in for them, and that a writer would be supplemented or replaced by AI. So I would say that the strikes dragged on longer because of AI, because the third guild, there was three guilds at the time negotiating for new contracts, was the Directors Guild, and they did not go
oh,
on strike because they're not worried that instead of Christopher Nolan, a robot is going to walk onto the set and yell action, cut,
right.
tell the actors. So directors had less reason to be worried about the arrival of AI. But what AI can do, and this is where it gets interesting, is it can benefit. Let's put aside what it can do, for example, in post-production, special effects, building virtual
Yep.
sets, all of that it can do. Anything creative, it can supplement or enhance existing abilities. But it can really benefit the film and cinema industry in the back end way. So, for example,
Mm,
films can now be dubbed into different languages seamlessly. So not only can you have an actor sounding the same as his natural voice in any language pretty much,
mm.
but they can also deepfake it so that his lips move
Oh,
and are
right.
synchronized to how he speaks. So we no more
Okay.
have this sort of poor dubbing. It will look as good as if they were speaking the language natively. Same for improved subtitling as well. But it just means that films can become more accessible because some people prefer to watch dubbed films, some with subtitles. You give them the option with AI. It also means that we can program films better. So here in the UK, the biggest cinema chain, View, has been using an AI system for 9 years now in terms of
Wow.
using it for programming which film should play on which screen at what time. Now, they started 9 years ago with this before AI was a big hype,
Mm.
and it took them a long time to get it right. They're on to model 58 of their AI software. And they said, and Tim Richards, the CEO, said, when we got to about model 30, we said,
Mm.
okay, now it's getting interesting. And when we got to model 50, he said, okay, now we can actually start to use it. And what it's meant is that they play more different types of films, including 45% non-English language films in their multiplexes. So they're playing more art house films than art house cinemas because they're able to slot films in. They're able to know that, okay, here we have a Turkish community that could be interested. Here we
Wow.
have an Italian community, a Bengali community. So therefore, they can target these niche films and still find an audience for it. It doesn't replace a film programmer, but it enhances their ability to play more films to more people on more opportunities. So AI can really, really help. It can then help in things like marketing as well. But that's true for pretty much every field, not specific to cinema
Yep.
as well.
Now, so we see AI as an innovation at the moment, right? It depends from what angle you're saying it, right? Um, so innovation keeps cinema alive, and what's the most surprising way the industry is still evolving, you reckon?
Oh, there's been just so much because let's remember cinema was invented 130 years ago and it's still going after
Mm,
130 years. I mean, there's not many audiovisual formats that have survived that long. So really, cinema just keeps reinventing itself in so many different ways. You have to remember we went from silent films to talking pictures, we went from black and white to color, we did widescreen, we had multi-channel audio, digital
yep.
projection. Interestingly, the latest innovation has, yes, we do have some great new technologies. So whether it's, IMAX with lasers, whether it's Dolby Cinema with Dolby Atmos and high contrast ratio, high dynamic range of colors, we've got all of that. We've got 4DX, we've got motion seating. So if you really want Fast and Furious, the full experience, then you'll have a seat which, will take you along on the ride in the
Okay.
cars. All of these things are great. But what I would say is the best thing that has appealed to people are things to do with not just screen and sound, but seat and service. More money than anything has been spent on ripping out old seats and replacing them with comfortable
Mm,
recliners. I mean, you see this in Australia, you see it in India, you see it
yep.
all around the world. You want to just create a greater level of comfort to audiences so that the reason for leaving their couch at home is to have a more comfortable couch to watch films in the cinema. And the second thing I would say is service. Not just the fact that you would have more than just popcorn and soda, but you would have more options of maybe an alcoholic beverage if you like, maybe, bubble tea if that's the
Mm,
thing, or even serving coffee in a cinema, hot foods, all kinds of things. But service should really be about making you feel welcome. There's cinema here called Everyman, and it's known for its comfortable seats. But what a friend told me, what I love about Everyman is every time I go into one of their cinemas, I feel like the staff are happy to see me. You want to feel
okay.
like, you belong here. This
Yep.
is somewhere, and you could talk to them about the film. You could talk to them about the special Barbie cocktail or whatever they have on the menu. It's just got to be a nice place to be, whatever the film is.
Interesting. It's interesting perspective.
It's
What?
really making part of the whole experience economy. For again, you can shop for most things online. So why would you want to go into the shop? Well, it's because you have knowledgeable staff there, or because they make it a
Mm,
nice experience, or maybe they have a cafe in the back where you can, relax between shopping purchases, somewhere to take the kids, to
yep.
distract them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of these things have to be considered. Otherwise, we'd all stay at home and do all of our shopping, our eating, and watching films from the comfort of our lounge.
Right. Now you just you are so excited talking about cinema, the experience, and what how it benefits audiences from a social, from a mental perspective. What's the biggest myth people believe about death of movie theaters, you reckon?
Um, I think the biggest myth about the death of movie theaters is people have always thought when there's new technology, well, this is the thing that's going to kill cinema. you know, Now we have this,
Okay.
and they've been saying this for as long as as somebody who's a bit of a geek of film history. When radio came, people think, well, you can have free entertainment at home. You just switch it on, and
Mm,
there's a soap opera. Television actually did do damage to cinema in terms of attendance. But yeah, same thing. People thought now you can have, comedy, drama in your home. Don't need to go to cinema. The same when VHS tapes came, the same when piracy became an issue, when streaming became a reality. People are saying that virtual reality, you can have a virtual, cinema strapped to your eye, to your
mm,
face. So a new technology does not by itself kill cinema. Usually it gives an incentive for cinema to evolve, to become better. So when we had television come along, that's when suddenly all films went color, they went widescreen, we had multi-channel audio, those kind of things. So a new technology in itself does not kill cinema, but rather it forces it to evolve. And the other myth I'd like to puncture is that people think that young audiences are not interested in cinema. They only want to sit and watch TikTok or do social media. That's not the case.
Mm. Okay. Wow. So they are willing to come to the movies. It depends what how's the content and how it's been made.
Yes, that's definitely the case, and we're seeing that, and it's very interesting. I've been talking to a lot of cinema owners recently. In fact, I published a blog post on the CinemaNext blog about young audiences, especially not just coming back to cinema for art house films, but rediscovering repertory cinema, so old films. And they're finding a huge interest for the most, kind of obscure old films that you wouldn't think would still be selling out. But again, we're seeing this phenomenon in uh, in Australia as much as we're seeing it in the UK or Australia, in the US. And it comes down to a lot of it actually has to do with digital. So a lot of it comes from young audiences discovering old films through platforms like Letterboxd. So if you're a real
Mm.
film nerd, you go into Letterboxd, like, what are the 25 films I need to see before I die? Edward Yang's Yi Yi is one of them. Well, they end up going and seeing that. They have, when David Lynch recently died, I talked to cinemas and they said, yeah, previously we would have put on maybe a double bill, two films of his. Now they can play those films the whole week and there will be people coming and finding them.
Wow.
Recently in Bristol, I spoke to the programmers there, and they were showing. They've been showing the film "A Perfect Day" by Wim Wenders, the Japanese film, and they kept after it came out, they kept playing at least once a week for a whole year. And after it had been in cinema for a year, they put it on several screenings on the weekend. It was the best-selling film that weekend, even though it had been out for a year. It was available to stream, to buy, whatever. So young audiences are finding films in the cinema, art house films, Barbie, Oppenheimer films, but also old films. Because, as a friend of mine said, an old film is still a new film if you haven't seen it yet.
Seen it yet? Yes, you're right. Where I watched movies with my grandfather.
Mm,
I still remember The Great Escape with Steve McQueen
right,
and Guns of Navarone,
right.
and they were fantastic movies at that time.
Yeah.
I was just so excited. I was so into the movies, and I am planning to watch. I want to play them for my son as well once he's a little bit
Yes,
older.
you'll be able to arrange group
Mm.
screenings with your friends. We can request a film to be programmed. So
Oh,
all
wow.
these incredible opportunities opened up by technology and social media platforms.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna go back to you just mentioned in your intro that you have your own sort of a business. It's
Mm,
called Cult Picks, a platform for all cult classics in a short form content era.
mhm.
Why double down on nostalgia?
Um, Nostalgia is good business, actually, a purely commercial perspective.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's making me rich, okay,
Right.
because it's a hobby. So any money we make, we kind of plow back into the business, just to
Nice.
watch it grow further. But we're doing it because it's fun, and there's definitely a market for nostalgia. I mean, why is it that vinyl records are suddenly taking off? Explain that to me.
Mm,
Why? I
yeah,
mean,
people.
they get
Yeah.
scratched. They take
They're
up a lot of
scratched.
space. They're heavy.
Wow. No. Okay. And you. Okay. And
There's definitely a nostalgia market, and also because people like to discover new things. And like I said, I mentioned Letterbox before. I'll mention it again. It
mm,
is an incredible platform for people who really, really love film, who want to talk about film, who want to share what they've been watching, who want to find out what other their friends have been watching, who want to write lists of their favorite. So we've been working with cult films, me and my partner Rickard, for over 20 years now. And so we knew that there was a market, there was this interest in it. We just saw it progressing from film screenings to packaged home media, and streaming was the next logical step. So if nobody else is going to do it, we decided during the pandemic, well, this will be our lockdown project.
I'm going to go back um, to the AI topic, and I wanted
Mhm.
to pick your brain to our listeners. They'll be keen, and I'm keen to understand AI. It's coming. We can't stop it. It's definitely it's technology. It's coming, and we have to embrace it, or or it may become a threat for some, or it may not. Now, from
Yes.
your perspective, I know you just mentioned the writers
Mm.
association, the actors association. They went on a strike. How
Yes.
they can embrace it? It's like dubbing artists. You just mentioned an actor's lip sync can be done, dubbing
Yeah.
can be done through AI. So what
Mm.
what these what these crew can do to embrace AI and
You've hit the nail on the head. The first thing is it's coming. Whether we like it or
mm,
not, it is definitely coming. So there's no point sticking our head into the sand. So we have to
yeah,
educate ourselves about it. We have to understand it and we have to talk about it. Yes, we have to decide where to pick our fights. So there are a
mm,
few things here that are crucial. First of all, a lot of these large language models for generative AI have been used by training them on copyrighted material. Now, whether that's millions of books, as was recently revealed in a leak about Meta, the parent of Facebook,
yeah,
or on Studio Ghibli films, there was recently the
yeah, I saw that.
trend of like Ghiblify yourself,
Ghibli.
which is very
Yeah,
funny. But you think about it, AI wouldn't
it's
know how to do that if it hadn't been scanning all of
exactly.
Miyazaki's films. And I'm pretty sure that Mr. Miyazaki did not consent to his films being used this way or being used for the learning. So,
Yep.
really, there needs to be more of a serious discussion between AI companies and the copyrights holders of the material whose work is being used to train them, whether it's books or films or TV
Mm,
shows. It was also revealed that AI has been used on trained on television shows. Go into a any AI program and ask it to write a scene from an episode of Friends or
mm.
Seinfeld or Third Rock or Two
Office.
and a Half
Yeah,
Men.
whatever.
It can do that because a lot of those large language models were trained on the subtitles that were available for these TV shows that are online. So they didn't even have to go into the shows themselves. So first of all, is have a conversation about what is the fair use of copyrighted material. Secondly, artists, whether it's actors, dubbing actors, writers, again, they have to protect their own identity. So you shouldn't be able to just copy an actor's voice and then
Mm,
use it across any number of films, any different
mm.
dubs. Now, that's not going to happen for another reason, which is worth just sidetracking into. So, for example, you could make Tom Cruise sound as if he spoke Bhojpuri, or he could, Kannada,
Or
or
Spanish
any
or
language.
Russian. Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
but for the markets where Tom Cruise is being dubbed, he already has an actor, and that actor is what Germans or French people think of when Tom Cruise opens his mouth. They expect to hear that voice. They don't expect to hear
Mm,
Tom Cruise, the real Tom Cruise, talking French. There's been an actor who's been responsible for his voice for 20,
yep.
30 years.
Yep.
So that's why we're going to see it more initially for small independent films, for low budget films. And that's good news for them because it means potentially they could have wider distribution, they could have a bigger reach. So again, we're back to that point of AI is both a threat if it's not respecting agreements, copyrights, etc. But it's an opportunity if it means that we can do things better for films with the consent of the producers, the rights holders, and the artists involved. So, but above all, we have to have discussion like you and I are having here now. We have to educate ourselves
Mm.
and we have to really get to grips with it before it's a fact of life and we can't do anything about it.
Do you think if AI is writing a script for a movie, will it have the same emotion as a writer writing a script?
Excellent question again. The short answer is we don't know. The longer
Okay.
answer is there are intriguing examples already. So where I would compare AI being now in terms of the creative writing is sort of like fan fiction. So it's people who love Harry Potter, read every Harry Potter
Mm.
novel. Now they're going to write their own sequel or their own spin-off of Harry Potter or The Hunger Games or Twilight or you name it. So it's at the moment, AI is like fan fiction. It can take what's already there, like a Star Trek episode, and it can sort of come up with a new Star Trek or Friends episode. Could it invent a new Star Trek franchise or a new Friends franchise? Probably not yet,
Not yet.
but
Not yet. Yeah.
not yet, maybe never, but definitely not yet.
Now, one last question before we wrap up, Patrick. What do you think cinema experience will look like in 2035, and are more immersive or more niche?
Um, again, great question to end on. I like to talk about that. What we're seeing now is we're seeing a lot of premiumization. I'd say that's the biggest trend right now. So you have cinema attendance hasn't always returned to where it was before the pandemic. In some countries like France, yes, but so what they're trying to do is if you can't get enough people in, then make the people who are coming pay a bit more. So whether it's
Right.
IMAX or comfortable seats or so on. So premium is one thing. My biggest worry is that we're going to see cinema bifurcate. So on one hand, it'll be like a thrill ride experience with the 4DX chairs, and on the other hand, we'll have the art house experience where people go and watch it with a glass of wine in a comfortable recliner. So I don't want cinema to become like opera. Opera was a mass medium 100 years ago, 120 years ago. Common people went to the opera to be entertained, to pick up good tunes and so on. That shouldn't be the future of cinema. Cinema should be a mass entertainment medium. So we have to make it accessible, make it for everybody still. And I think it will that. I think we will still have great filmmakers making great films in 10 years' time. I think we will still watch it in a crowd, in a
Mm,
darkened room, on a very, very large screen with great audio and a snack or a drink with us. So, it's been that way for most of 130 years now. I don't know if it'll be that way for another 130 years, but easily
mm.
for the next 10 years. So, get ready for Mufasa 3 and, having also those
That's
maybe more grown and maybe no, be prepared then to take your son to watch The Great Escape on the big
Get
screen.
escape. Oh wow,
Yeah,
I'll be so thrilled. I'll be so excited to
he will be too. I can guarantee it because it's a
yeah.
great film.
It's a great film, yes. And Mufasa 3, yeah, I would love to see how the director is going to come up with a sequel. And we have spoken about getting out of your house to go to the movie theaters. We spoke about servicing and seating as well. We spoke about being paying premium prices in the future. And that's what cinemas will start doing it, and we don't want that to happen. We want it to be an immersive experience and more like a mass experience for people. So this has been a wonderful podcast, and I've learned a lot, and it was an interesting um, journey so far for me to understand more about the movies
Yes.
and your journey as well. So thank you so much for your
Well, thank
time
you very much,
today.
Bala. I have to say you're asking all the right question because those are the questions that we need to keep asking ourselves
Mm.
as an industry and moving forward. So it's been a real pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much again for inviting me onto the show and hope to see you at the cinema.